Hey, so my name is Christoph Derndorfer, and I'm one of the co-founders and now the head of Olpc Austria, a small independent NGO that we set up in 2007 to support one laptop per child and sugar initiatives around the world. Plus, I'm also the editor of olpcnews.com, which is the largest independent blog about the project.
And how did you first become involved with Olpc?
Well, it must have been at some point in 2005 or 2006 when I just stumbled across Olpc in the media, and it was the very early days when the first prototypes were announced. And I was always very interested in general about the impact of ICT on society and vice versa. And education is also a topic that's close to my heart, so I just found that this is a very interesting project. And then in mid-2006, I happened to be at a conference, an ICT conference in Taiwan, and I met this guy called Wayne Woter, and he had already many years of experience of using technology in developing nations. And over a couple of beers, we just basically discussed Olpc for an hour or two, and I discovered, okay, there's this great vision, but to actually implement it, that's actually quite challenging and hard. And it's not just you have this magic $100 green laptop and everything's going to change and improve. And I stayed in touch with Wayne, and soon after that he launched olpcnews.com, the aforementioned blog. And then in early 2007 he asked me to write a guest article. And so I just basically started contributing irregular guest articles. And then at some point in early 2007 I got an email from a guy in Vienna who said, I've been following your blog posts on Olpc News. I'm also in Vienna and I'm really interested in Olpc, and I know some guys who are currently at the office in Cambridge and they'll bring back a prototype. Do you want to meet up? Yeah. And so it must have been in May 2007, we then had a meeting over coffee with a couple of folks, and the guy brought the prototype, and it's so very exciting. You had seen the images, you'd heard about it, the hand crank and the screen and tiny and special screen, all those things. And there was a bunch of us sitting together, and we realized, okay, this is such a cool project, but it's also very, very challenging. So, we have to support this. We have to do something about this. And that's when we started Olpc Austria, and well, we've been having a lot of fun ever since.
Cool. What have been some of the challenges that you've come up against, both in Olpc Austria and then also in your travels around the world?
Well, I think really there are many challenges. One of the big challenges, and one of the overall challenges definitely is, how do you take this tool, which, we all agree is very, very usable and very versatile, and how do you really turn it into an effective learning tool for the children and also for the teachers and parents and other community members. And I think that's on many levels that is not that easy. And just right now I was sitting in a session where we talked a little bit about, for example, creating lesson plans. So in all countries basically of the world, they have a curriculum and there are very specific learning goals for each grade. And so, for example, how can you create lesson plans or conceptual support materials for teachers, telling them, okay, you've got learning goal X, Y, Z in this year in math, for example. How can you use the XO to achieve that, and how can you use that tool? Of course, there's many other things, but that's one of the things that I'm personally very interested in. And maybe in terms of communities aspect or perspective, and some of the things that I've been doing with Olpc Austria and also Olpc News is very much about documentation, about writing things down. Because just if you've done all the other interviews, just talking to a lot of the people here, there's so much knowledge, so many experiences in the back of people's heads, but they're not really explicitly and easily accessibly available to other people. Yeah? And that is one of the big issues. And Alan Kay was like one of the big names in computing and also in use of computing devices in education. He says one of the biggest issues over the past 30 years of this whole field has been that people keep reinventing the flat tire. So we're not even reinventing the wheel, but we're constantly spending our time and our resources on things that don't work. Yeah? And one of the reasons why people keep doing that is because it hasn't been documented how to do things, what are the outcomes. In many areas, whether it's NGOs, whether it's academia, whether it's volunteers, there's also reluctance to talk about failures. And I think that's an important aspect that we need to consider. And basically all kinds of documentation to see what's happening and to develop good practices, to develop lists of things that we should avoid, and so on and so forth.
Cool. That sounds excellent. What kind of central depository do you think there should be for something like that, and how it should be accessed?
I don't know. I don't think there's going to be one single solution. I think the repository is part of the issue, I think the bigger topic, rather than what kind of repository or what kind of technology or platform you use, is just the process and the understanding of the people, of the value of having that kind of documentation, so people actually spend the resources on it. Whether it ends up being a wiki, or whether it ends up being as a collection of PDFs somewhere, or they have video interviews or interactive lessons or whatever. To me, I think that's secondary. It's more about the making people understand that it is important to spend their time also documenting the projects, and I think based on that we could achieve a lot of things.
Cool. And then in your travels, I'm sure you've seen some pretty sort of amazing uses of the XO. What are some of the sort of clever solutions or things that sort of stick out in your mind?
Well, there's a couple, but there's one that I really liked, something that I encountered in a Peruvian school last summer. And the situation is that in Peru, now it's changing, but last year in the summer they were still using a very old version of Sugar, where there was basically no easy way to transfer files or things like that from one XO to the other one. And we're talking about very poor, very remote and rural communities, so it's not like here where everybody has 5 USB drives where you can simply switch things. But at some point, one kid had gotten some music from a friend of his who had a USB drive. Yeah? And other children in the classroom were interested in getting those songs, because they were popular songs. So what they did is they stuck 2 XOs together, and one of them was playing the music via the media player, and the second XO they'd used the record activity and recorded the audio. So that's how they transmitted or transferred the music. So I think that was just a very cool, ingenious solution for trying to do what they want to do.
Cool. What do you think are some of the misconceptions, and I'm sure you've had experience with this, people have about Olpc, and what are the things that you tell people to, like, well, maybe that misconception is right, or maybe it's wrong,
Well, I think that there's several of them. I mean, Olpc is mainly known for the $100 laptop. And I think, first of all, I think the price point is confusing, because when you realize, if you look at the cost structure of a lot of those projects, the actual cost of the machine is only actually 15 to maybe 20% of the total implementation cost, or the total cost of ownership, because you have to consider aspects like connectivity, logistics, teacher training, developing content, developing the aforementioned lesson plans, maintenance things, and so on and so forth. So I think the price point is I think there's too many people spend too much time focusing on the price here. Another misconception, I think, is that I see Olpc, or the XO in particular, I look at it as a tool. So it's, as I said before, we quickly realized it's not a magic thing. You hand out an XO, and people are magically going to become educated and smart and have better lives, and everybody's going to be rich and famous and beautiful and whatnot. It is just a tool, and everything else, like the teacher training, supporting communities, doing monitoring and evaluation, maintenance, all of those other things also very, very important, critically important, I would say, and they are just very hard. And that's also one of the things. I mean, it is a challenging effort, particularly when you work in some rural communities or places like Haiti or Afghanistan or Peru. I mean, it's just so many things that it's definitely a big challenge in many ways. And it's not as easy as taking a laptop, handing it out, and everything will happen magically.
And then, speaking of those difficulties, what are the things that drives you to keep going, or things that inspire you?
Well, I think on a practical level, it's definitely also the community. I've been very lucky to be able to travel to a couple of places and deployments the last few years. For example, last year was in South America, visiting the project in Uruguay, in Paraguay, in Peru. In 2009, I volunteered with the project in Nepal for about 3 months. There's all those kinds of summits where people meet up, and honestly, like 99.9% of people I met at those summits are just awesome, great people. You can have, you spend 2 hours, discussing over things, and then 10 hours working on things, and in the end of the day, you sit over dinner, you grab a beer, and those are really nice, great, smart, intelligent, and passionate people. It's a great crowd of people to hang out with. And on a larger level, I do think that education is an extremely important component to define the future, or to give people the tools to define their own future. And so I'm just very passionate about giving children, basically giving the the future generations the best possible tools to be able to deal with that future. And so I think it is very much about the original vision of, how can we use technology as part of this larger process.
Cool. And then how has the laptop, do you think, personally changed you? And then also, how do you think the world is going to be different because of it?
How has it changed me? I don't know. I mean, I would have definitely never gone to Nepal and spent some months living in Kathmandu. I mean, I've always loved traveling, but there's definitely places I wouldn't have gone without the Olpc project. There's many great people that I would have never had a chance to meet if it hadn't been for my involvement here. So that's something that I just really appreciate, and as I mentioned before, really enjoy. On a larger level, I think first of all, I think it's important to realize, at least that's my point of view, that we're only going to see the real impacts of a project like Olpc 10, 15, 20, 30 years down the road. And I really do believe this, especially in a case like Uruguay, where now, at the end of 2009, they had handed out a laptop to every child in primary school, and are now handing them out in secondary schools. I think we're going to see a lot of impacts. Maybe one of the first impacts will be that there will be maybe more people going into technology education. I think just as a whole society, it's going to change the way that they use technology, because children will be used to just constantly having this tool and a connected tool available to them. It's not so much also about the information technology, but in my point about the communication technology. I just think that it's going to impact society in many different ways, and I think a lot of them are going to be unpredictable, which I think is really exciting as well.
Cool. And then what question would you like me to ask, or what kind of comment would you like to add? Or?
No, it's just it's a great event here. I'm really having a great time. It's great that you're spending your time documenting this by doing interviews with people, and yeah, I'm having a great time. Really, that's the short-term summary. Not only here at the summit, but also in the whole project. So get involved, help us.